You have accessed the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lanterns Myron Rumsey and Bill Giancoli, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome back to the podcast of OA. This is episode 118. I'm Bill Giancoli, and I'm joined as always, the guardian of the blog of OA, the reason why we're all here, Myron Rumsey. How are you, Myron?
I'm doing good, Bill. How about yourself?
I'm doing quite well. You had a nice, relaxing holiday. It's the new year. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really well. I was a little sick there for a while, but got over it. And, we have a couple of bad bugs floating around the area, and but you go through it and you're ready to go again. How were your holidays?
They were good. I got to relax a lot, hang out with family, eat a lot of food I probably shouldn't have, and just enjoying myself and, catching up on some Green Lantern, because now we have 7 issues that we're going to cover. And boy, man, this twice a month really catches up on you.
You're right. It sneaks up on you fast. Well, and I think we both got busy during the holidays with family things that neither one of us had good times to record. So, but that's the holidays for you. Was Santa good to you?
I would say he was pretty good to me. He was especially good to the kids, which I guess I found that out once you have kids. It's really that's where the Christmas is going. Yeah,
it's not about us anymore, Bill. It's about the kids. Yeah.
Damn it. Yeah, how about you?
Good. Well, I have an adult child, so it shifts a little bit back when they get to be an adult. So you got something to look forward to. But I had a good holiday. But anyway, people are here to listen to us talk about Green Lantern stuff, so I guess we probably should get back on track with that.
But before we do, let's. We are now being heard. We can be heard in Spotify, correct?
That is correct. You can find us on Spotify. Spotify just started hosting podcasts not too long ago, and it's exclusively through the people that just happen to be the ones that I used for our podcast hosting, which allows us to indirectly get in to Spotify as part of that program. I applied for it a while ago, and they just went through their first round, and we were picked as one of the first 500 or so podcasts they were doing, which was a great honor. So yeah, you can find us on Spotify now. So that's cool. It's another avenue. I can't think of too many places you can't find us in the streaming audio world, from iTunes to Google to TuneIn Radio to Spreaker and Stitcher and now Spotify. So we're trying to make ourselves as available to people as we possibly can. The other thing with Green Lantern news that's kind of interesting, I don't know, Bill, if you are familiar with the Funko Pop Legion of Collectors monthly subscription service.
I am not. I was going to try to repeat what you just said, but I don't think I could.
So for those that don't know what it is, Funko, which makes those adorable little pop figures, and they make another line of figures called Dorbs, and another line of figures called Rock Candy figures. They have a bi-monthly subscription program, and they do several different ones. Like they have a Marvel box, they have a Star Wars box, and they have a DC box, which is called the Legion of Collectors. And every other month you can subscribe to this program, and every other month you'll get a blind box of goodies. And I don't know about the other boxes, but for the Legion of Collectors DC box, everything that's in the box is exclusive to the subscription service. So you can't buy these things anywhere else. And generally speaking, each box has a t-shirt or a wearable of some kind, usually at least 1 or 2 Funko Pops, and then a couple of other collectibles, either from other product lines they have or something new and original. For example, a few months back, there was a Joker coffee mug. So there's really cool stuff. And for Green Lantern fans, when it comes to the Funko world of collectibles, there hasn't been a lot of merchandise for them. Back in 2011, when the movie came out, there was a Hal and Sinestro figure. Those are long gone. So right now, the only figures you can get there's a Hal Jordan one, and then Walgreens had an exclusive Jon Stewart figure, which you might be able to still find in your local Walgreens, depending on how much they've got purchased, but otherwise you can only get it through the secondary market. So Green Lantern fans have been starving for Funko stuff, and so it's really kind of neat to see that Legion of Collectors is going to do a whole box based around Green Lantern, and it could be anything. People are speculating, all kinds of stuff from, I know personally I'd like to see an oversized Kilowog Funko Pop, a large scale Funko Pop, or, a really cool t-shirt, or maybe it'd be really neat if they did a new power ring based on Hal's new power ring from the book where, the one he forged from Will, because it's a little different. That'd be cool, so who knows?
Yeah, like when you squeeze it, it lights up.
That'd be okay. I'm looking for some cool swag. For those that are interested, you can sign up for this up through March 1st. And you kind of say, like, I do a month-to-month subscription, so I only get billed every other month, but you can cancel at any time. So you can actually jump on for a month, one box, and then jump back off again. So you can jump in, buy the Green Lantern box, and then jump back out again and not have to buy any more unless you're so inclined to continue. I like the program just because they tend to make Funko Pops of figures you wouldn't normally see. For example, I have one that is a Funko Pop of Catwoman in her original outfit, with not the one that everybody's familiar with. So it's kind of neat.
Purple and the
the purple with the little whip and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's cool.
No, that is very cool. I see a lot of these on in Myron's office.
Yeah. I kind of leave them adorned out there. People walk by and they're like, "What the?"
Well, we like to play with them and then like move them around.
Well, I've come back from vacation a couple times and people have posed them in very interesting positions.
Those scoundrels.
those other people, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, we got some comics to talk about. That's why people are here. So we're going to talk about everything from issues 31 and 32 with basically Superman and Hal Jordan teaming up to the Twilight of the Guardians arc.
Absolutely. So let's get started. We're going to start off with issues 30 and 31.
All right. We'll be right back after the break.
What up, dweebs? This is Guy Gardner. You're listening to the podcast of OA.
So, Myron, we're going to start off with issues 30 and 31 of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, and it focuses really on Hal Jordan getting sent to Earth to pair up with Superman, and it's a kind of a fun issue to see the two of them working together, but we have some interesting developments here, like Hector Hammond returns, Carol and Hal's relationship, but the real kind of most eye-opening thing is the return of Parallax and Sinestro. So what did you think of this, Myron?
I enjoyed it. It was a fun book. Seeing Hal come back to Earth is always a fun thing, and it was kind of neat when this started out. All the Earth Lanterns were kind of vying for who's going to get to go home, kind of thing. But the whole point of the story was for Hal, because of his experience with Sinestro and his experience with Superman, to go back to Earth to report the investigative report of Parallax and Sinestro being back. And this story kind of follows closely up on the heels of a two-parter in the Superman series where Superman is investigating a situation with missing children. And what you find out is that Parallax has been on Earth in a very weakened state, and he's using what abilities he has to lure children in because they're easier to scare, keeps them entrapped, and is getting stronger based on the growing number of children he gets. And he gets strong enough to lure Superman in. Parallax's goal is to basically possess Superman, thinking that, well, I've tried to possess humans. I've been merged with Sinestro. So maybe my best bet is to try to take over Kryptonian because maybe I'll be unstoppable at that point. So he does that. Superman basically sacrifices himself to save the kids. And so you have a Parallax-controlled Kryptonian who, once he's been taken over, Sinestro shows up. And they don't really explain how Sinestro comes back, but he battles the version of Parallax and tames him on Quord of all places, because we also see the Weaponers back again. And in the long game of this is that Superman tricks Sinestro, beats Sinestro, traps Parallax in the ring, and Sinestro and Alyssa Drac disappear. And that's where this story picks up. So you have Hal going to Earth to basically, I don't want to say interrogate, but take a statement from Superman. And while he's there, he gets taken over by a distressed Hector Hammond. And Hector makes him think that Superman is still Parallax. And so the two of them kind of, it's the two heroes meet and they got a fight thing. And this is a situation where Hal thinks that Superman is Parallax, and the two of them go at it. So I thought it was a lot of fun, Bill. I mean, how about yourself?
No, absolutely. It was not only to see Superman and how they interact, and I think there was some, even with the fighting, seemed a little bit lighthearted.
Yeah, yeah.
And I liked that even at the end there's like, hey, did you ever want to like just pop ahead and just end your problems?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, yeah, me neither. Yeah, yeah. It was a little dark, but it was it was humorous. So I really enjoyed this. I thought this was great. I had some questions about Hector Hammond though. So Hector Hammond. Now I don't remember this being his origin, but now it's these like the engineer.
The Krolotians, yes.
Yeah.
Were... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, I think we talked about this off mic, and you were saying, that this is a kind of a newer origin that Jeff Johns did. Yeah,
back when Jeff Johns did his Secret Origin arc, and he was kicking off the whole relaunch of Green Lantern, he did a 2-part story where you see Hector Hammond and these small little gremlin guys, only when we saw them before, they spoke German, which was it was kind of funny. They spoke this German type language, and it just reminded me of the Warner Brothers cartoons with the little gremlin guys,
right
on the airplane. But
well, that's what they kind of looked like. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they remind me of that. So it was kind of neat from that standpoint. Here we don't see that. We see them speaking English, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, we haven't seen this version of things in a little while. I can't remember exactly what the issue is at this point, but yeah, we haven't seen it since the beginning of the Jeff Johns run.
No, so they look like they work for a much bigger.
Yeah. Basically, they do possessions of people and do testing on them. And in the original story that they showed, that Jeff Johns did, basically you had them. They basically gave Black Hand his new powers. Black Hand used to have a little device he held in his hand, and he didn't have the ability he has now, where he can basically absorb the life essence from people through his hand. That came as a result of this whole Krolotian bit. But
okay,
yeah.
So that it was not, well. Then it was good to see Hector again in his large noggin.
Yeah, it was a little dark though. You mentioned the word dark when Hector Hammond finally gets to that point where he realizes his life isn't what it could be, and he wants to end it. He tries to commit suicide by a superhero.
By superhero.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. He tries to get Superman. He tries to mind control Superman and have Superman kill him, which how dark do you want to get, but it wasn't done in a deep, dark way, but in a way it made you feel sorry for Hector Hammond and the kind of existence he has.
Well, he always had kind of a sad existence, I thought,
Yeah. And
it seemed like, how would you like to have a head you could barely lift?
Yeah, really. And he just can't do much for himself. And he hero worships Hal and idolizes him. And that whole scene when Hal shows up and he's like, he's here.
I knew it.
Right. It's kind of sad and pathetic, but at the same time, it's creepy. It's, I don't know.
He's a creepy looking character.
Yeah. And it was neat. Pat Zurcher does the artwork on these 2 issues, and I thought he did a great job. It's very clean and classic looking. Mm-hmm. The gut wrenching part for me of this issue wasn't so much the Hector part, but the part where Hal sees the perfect version of his future or his life as he would want it. It's kind of like the Black Mercy plants in a way, and he realizes it's too perfect. And Carol is there. And Hal it's funny because Hal's able to say the things to this version of Carol that he can't say in real life because he knows she's not real. And to me, that's very human. I don't know how. Now, maybe I'm just pathetic, but I always had a hard time when you really care for someone, you're afraid to take that chance. And as much as they have this history, I think for all intents and purposes, Hal's afraid to commit. He's afraid to because he doesn't want to get turned down because he loves Carol too much. And it's interesting to see this version of Carol basically say, go get me.
Right.
Go
get some.
Yeah. It wasn't quite phrased that way, but yeah. And then Venditti. I may have
read it differently.
You maybe read it a little differently, yeah. And then Venditti, really, what a mean, cruel writer this guy is, to have Hal go to Carol's house. And he's standing out there, and he's nervous as a teenager, trying to figure out what to say. And he tries to be honest, and then there's that moment where he points the finger like a gun and says, "Looking good, babe." Like, that's going to work, I guess, especially against a woman like Carol Ferris. And he realizes he's just, when it comes to Carol, he's a mess, and he says that himself, and he says screw it, and he's going to go do it, and he pounds on the door. He's getting ready to pound on the door and says, "Here goes everything." And then his ring goes off, and he doesn't get to talk to Carol. So the one time he gets to come to Earth, he doesn't get to have that heart-to-heart that he really, really wants to have. And he finally gets himself all nerved up to do it, and then Jon Stewart just kind of sucker punches him and says, you've got to go out on a mission. Sorry, you got to leave right now.
Yeah, right now. Right now. Have you... Yeah, he gets there. Do you know where the keys to the science cells are? Because we don't know where the keys to the science cells are.
That sounds like it would be a commercial.
Yeah. It's like, we're having a problem here. We're like, but here's a thought. Can Carol and Hal ever get together? I mean, is that really... Because as soon as they get together, I think there has to be drama there. They can never get together.
It's interesting because I keep thinking of that spot with the finding the keys. All I can think is that tile commercial. The guy can't find the keys to his starship.
Oh, you're right.
Can Hal and Carol ever get together? It's interesting because their relationship is very cyclical, and I honestly feel like they love each other, but they can't live with each other. If you know what I mean,
right?
That for them, the having or the wanting is better than the having. That they do care about each other, but they have so much baggage, they can't get past it, no matter how hard you try. And if you look at over the history, it's very cyclical. They'll be very much apart, and then they'll come back together again, and there'll be this June to September romance, and then something will happen, and it'll go opposite directions. And what would be interesting this time is what's really different now is part of what Carol always had the frustration with Hal over was he couldn't stop being a Green Lantern and just be Hal for her. And now that she's been a Star Sapphire and she's had that experience of being a hero and she's spent her fair time away from her job, does she now see it differently? And I'd be interested in seeing that explored. But I also don't want to go through the same roller coaster ride I've been through. I've been on this merry-go-round how many times in reading this character for 40 years or so. I don't want to go in the same merry-go-round ride I've been on before. But I think Venditti, if he can write that kind of stuff and do it a little differently and maybe explore some of this stuff in a way that you can't, I wouldn't mind seeing it, but I don't see it happening on the pages of a book like this where you've got 4 main Earth Lanterns that are struggling for enough page time, let alone the rest of the Green Lantern Corps. When's the last time Eurecia had a line to say,
Who?
Yeah, exactly. I honestly, and I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I don't think that the Rebirth relaunch was good for the Green Lantern books just because you cram too much in one book. Nobody's got any room to breathe. And, people complain that their character doesn't get enough page time or, enough panel time. And I get it, but I can't blame Robert Venditti because this is the book he's been given to write. And I think he does a really good job of trying to balance it as best he can.
I think that's going to be prevalent in what we talk about next.
Yeah. But, if we had another book for, you could split the cast up a little bit, it might be better.
If only we had a title we could change out.
Yeah. Well, let's expound on it a little bit. Neither one of these titles is doing very well in sales. They're this month for December when the numbers just came out. You're talking the Hal Jordan book was in the low 30s, and the Green Lanterns book is below that. It's not even in the 30s at this point. I think the last couple issues sold in the 29,000 copy range, which some people may not feel as bad, but when you look at where they started, it's been they're dropping numbers every month. They have not settled into anything yet. And that's not good. And what is it going to take for...
Do they count subscriptions? I would assume so.
I don't know. These are the Comic-Con is the site I look at, and I don't think the digital books enter into these statistics either. So it's hard to get a true number. And then the other thing is you have to look at trade sales, because at least from what I understand, by the time they get the trade sales, that's pure profit. So if a trade sells well, a book may not sell well on a monthly basis, but it may sell well in trades, which makes up for it. So it's hard to compare. But if you look at the numbers for December, well, I got to take this back. Both books in December sold under 30,000. The Hal Jordan books averaged around 29,000 copies, and the Green Lanterns book sold 26,000 copies. Which, like I said, that doesn't sound like it's horrible. But when you consider that these two books started at near the 100,000 range,
right?
That's it's a steady drop, and neither book is gaining readers. Now, the Dawnbreaker issue, which we're going to talk about shortly, did hit the top 20, and it sold 57,000 copies, but then it dropped right back down again. So it didn't bring too much in terms of a sales bump. It still dropped, even over what it was doing before. So at some point, DC may make some changes. Who knows? But just talking about this particular book, I think it would benefit from having more than one book. I think you'd give a writer a chance to explore the characters more. Like I said, I'm not knocking Venditti. I think he's doing a great job with the book he's got.
Oh, I think he has a pretty good focus on what he's doing. I mean, this is a great little 2-issue arc.
Yeah.
It tied into a bigger story on the Superman end. But it was able to still further the Green Lantern story and the Green Lantern universe going forward. So, good. Let's put it this way: I could see this being a forgettable arc for me.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a bad. Just with after so much time, you would have to refresh my memory about the time those two got together.
Right.
But overall, I think Venditti does a great job at just, fleshing out. I think, let's put it this way. I think he understands out of all of us that it's called Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. And I think that's why we get a little bit more Hal.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's some consternation out there. If you go to some of the comic book message boards, the Jon Stewart fans are saying, why should I buy this book even though Jon Stewart's in charge? He's playing second fiddle in their minds. So a lot of them have walked away from the book. And I don't think you see that so much from the Kyle and Guy fans. But, boy, it'd be nice to have some breathing room so that characters like Kilowog and Aricia and some of those guys had more than just a background appearance or maybe 1 or 2 lines of dialogue. It almost feels like they are almost like they're the sidekicks, because they don't really get much. You've got focus on Somarley, the new Zudarian Green Lantern, but eventually she too will become a background character.
Well, I'm sure they'll have their time at one point. I think, they're going to change it up at one point, I'm sure.
Yeah, at some point they're going to have to do something. I just think in the long run, it was bad to add characters and reduce titles.
Right.
But anyway, do we want to talk about Dawnbreaker before we take a break?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Dawnbreaker is issue 32, and it plays into the kind of the metal universe, or whatever you would like, the other Metal Earth or whatever. And we start with Green Lantern, the Dawnbreaker. So, Myron, I only know the Dawnbreaker from Skyrim, but maybe you could enlighten us a little more.
Well, this is a Skyrim crossover. No. So DC's got this event called Metal that's going on right now. So long story short, and this is going to be hard to condense down, so I apologize for people that aren't reading it that are going to try to use this as a reference point, because it's probably not going to it's going to suck. But basically there's an elder god type of a character called Barbatos that's trying to come and destroy the multiverse, and he has, over time, his followers have changed our Batman to make him the portal to allow him to enter our dimension. That's the long and the short of it. And there are these characters that are basically called the Dark Knights. And these are versions of Batman from the negative multiverse. So if you think about, we have Earth 1, Earth 2, so on and so forth. The negative multiverse has versions of reality that should not exist. So these are, abortions of nature that only exist for a very short time. But on these worlds, some of these worlds, there are versions of Batman that line up with our Justice League characters. So there's a speedster Batman character, and all of these characters are born out of tragedy. And this one character called the Batman Who Laughs recruited them all. And the Dawnbreaker is basically think of a young Bruce Wayne who, in the moments when his parents have died and he's in that moment of anguish, the Green Lantern ring finds him. But he's too immature to handle the power, and he ends up using it for revenge. So he kills Joe Chill. He basically kills all the villains in Gotham. He rules with an iron fist, and eventually the Guardians and the Green Lantern Corps come to Earth, this version of Earth, and this version of the Green Lantern Corps. And basically the Dawnbreaker character learns an ability where he absorbs light. He creates darkness, and he destroys the entire Green Lantern Corps. And in the moments of this multiverse, this version of the universe dying, the Batman Who Laughs recruits the Dawnbreaker to become part of his evil Dark Knights version of the Justice League. And each one of them takes their counterpart in our reality and traps them in a version of a Batcave tailored to defeat them. And this issue that Robert Venditti and Ethan Van Sciver did is basically Hal having a showdown with the Dawnbreaker in the Dawnbreaker's version of the Batcave. So in a nutshell, that's what's going on. And all of in a nutshell, it's a pretty big nut, but okay.
Yeah.
And basically this story has to tie into a larger event. And that's why it's kind of weird, because this is plucked out of time, and in terms of continuity, it kind of doesn't fit in, because Metal's still going on. It has not wrapped itself up yet. I think it's got 2 more issues to go. It's been a very interesting series, but I like the Dawnbreaker character, and I like what happens in this issue in terms of his testing Hal and really pushing him to his limits. And you can see the moment where he knows he's not going to win. And none of them do win. All of them. This has to serve the larger story of all of them being captured by the Dark Knights. But you see him, okay, then bring it on. Who's first? And, he fights versions of Parallax and Hector Hammond and Atrocitus and Sinestro and Larfleeze and the Shark and all these other characters. And he basically succumbs to it in the end. But it was an interesting issue. I liked it for a character study more than anything else. I mean, you reading it cold probably have a different experience, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was just, more trying to figure out. It was kind of a neat. I try to look at it as it was cool how Hal was taking on this. I don't know what you would call Metal Lantern Batman. And I thought it's just cool way of using the ring and everything, but I just didn't know how it tied into everything else. Yeah,
I don't think that they necessarily did a good job of giving you the background you might have needed if you were coming into it cold.
Now, is the Green Lanterns, now this is affecting all through the whole DC universe, right?
Right.
Now, what are they trying to tap into here? What is this?
They're basically trying to, the Justice League has been trying to stop Batman because Batman has disappeared because he wants to prevent himself from becoming that portal. And the Justice League are trying to get to him to stop it from happening. And so the Dark Knights are basically a deterrent to keep the Justice League busy while the agents of Barbatos let their dirty work take over. So these guys are here basically to keep the Justice League from accomplishing their goal of rescuing Batman.
Well, no, I understand it. I guess
my
question was more of a commercial sense. Like, is this, that's the one thing I guess I'm so far removed from, I guess, that look, or I don't know how you would describe it, a very particular genre of style. Yeah, it was like almost like horror metal. Or
yeah, it's kind of got those kind of overtones to it. It's interesting because they're usually, you'll find, like in this issue, you'll see Hal talking about, I came to rock. There are kind of musical tie-ins to this whole heavy metal thing. I mean, the cover of the first issue of Metal was basically the metal sign, the hand sign.
Right.
They took the characters and put them in the position that formed the hand sign. So
they're going for like that, almost like Iron Maiden, heavy metal.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been kind of a neat story. I'm not sure, but basically every one of the characters who had a doppelganger from the Dark Multiverse had a Bats Out of Hell issue that tied them together to kind of show how their character dealt with their doppelganger and how they were defeated by their doppelganger.
Well, very good. That's all I got.
It was kind of weird because of the way it kind of broke the stories up, but it served its purpose. In this issue, sold, like I said, 57,000 copies and hit the top 20 for the first time since I think the second issues of either one of the current Green Lantern books current series. So it was neat to see it break that many sales, obviously because it was tied into Metal, because like I said, the numbers dropped back down to normal afterwards. But anyway, it was a fun read. There's not much more to say about it other than that, I don't think.
That's all I got to say about that.
All right, so let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the Twilight of the Guardians.
This is Giancarlo Volpe, producer of Green Lantern, the animated series, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
So, Bill, we're going to finalize this episode of the podcast of OA talking about the Twilight of the Guardians. It's a big 4-issue arc, and it answers a couple of lingering questions. One of the things that people have talked about is, what happened to the Templar Guardians? Well, we find out what happened, and it's not pretty. And I don't know. I thought it was a really good arc. What was your take on the whole thing?
Oh, I really enjoyed this arc. I think this is the kind of Green Lanterns we've always talked about, and that we've always wanted. Kind of a very focused mission of. It was very much like Taken. We see what Guardians we do have, Ganthet and Sade, taken by an ancient enemy, which we're going to talk about in a second here, and they, the 4 lanterns have to come together. The 4 Earth lanterns come together to go rescue them. Great action, some good suspense, and a really great underlying father, child kind of theme that was kind of playing throughout of all this about life and the importance of continuing that life and what have you. So, it's such a very good issue on a lot of different levels. And I think we talked about this off the mic, was just, how many different things we could really enjoy about this arc. And this would be a great trade. I think just kind of bringing the Guardians back like they did. So, I mean, that's my impression of it. But my biggest question, I think, when I was reading this was, who are the controllers?
So, if you go back to before the Owens were Owens and they were Malthusians, and they were normal-sized beings, they kind of split into a few different factions. Originally all the women went on to become Zamorans, which led to Star Sapphires, and the Malthusian men split into 2 factions because they disagreed about how to respond to the evil that Krona unleashed, and they had different ideas. And one set of Guardians, at this point they weren't called Guardians yet, but go with me. One set of Guardians wanted to create the Green Lantern Corps, and another set wanted to do something different, and they became the controllers, and they, over eons of time, evolved differently and looked even in the comics back then, look like they look in these books. And the controllers created their own version of a intergalactic police force called the Dark Stars. And for a while there, Jon Stewart and Aricia and I think Salak and a couple other characters were all members of the Dark Stars when, I think this is post-Emerald Twilight, if I remember right. For a while, they all served as members of the Dark Stars. And Jon, in fact, was their leader for a while. So it's neat to see Robert Venditti bring these particular characters back again, because we haven't really seen them since the 1980s, I don't think. So it's pretty neat.
No, it was kind of cool. They had this very not Sinestro, but Ming from the Flash Gordon.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they even look like, hey, we just came back from the '60s. So they were. No, but they were cool, and we enjoyed that. But in another level of this, getting into like more of the deeper theme of what was happening here, is Ganthet, very reflective Ganthet from the very beginning, watching, is it Lomar Ray?
Somar Lee.
And just watching her flying around and taking in the joy that is her, to the very, last issue where he's kind of contemplating, wow, is this going to be it? Is this my time? And what did I never heard the word father, and kind of then coming to the conclusion at the end that, they need to be serving their creation, pretty deep stuff for a 4-issue arc, but I thought that it was good, and it was great to see where the Guardians are, how they come back. And I like this new look Guardians, with the Templar Guardians who had the one with the helmet, and they all have a little bit, we call them the hippie Guardians.
yeah.
I like how I like this like introspective Ganthet that kind of is bringing in deeper themes, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, and you also see Rami being one of them, so it kind of ties it back to the
Rami, yes.
Which is interesting, because when we last saw Rami, he left with Tyranner to go find Volthoom. So it's interesting to see that he's been captured, but apparently finding Volthoom isn't that important at this point. But I like the fact, one of the things I like about Robert Venditti is he's a long-form writer. So he may have plot threads that he leaves dangling, but he in the back of his head, he's got a plan for what he's going to do with those things. And here we see the Templar Guardians. I remember I did an episode of the Lantern Cast, and every year they do, they started a couple of years ago, they do kind of a State of the Green Lantern Union, and they have me on and a couple of other people on, and we chat about the books. And one of the pet peeves was, what happened to the Templar Guardians? It's like everybody forgot about them, and I think I've alluded to that on occasions, as they're not even mentioned. And here you find out what happens to them. And, poor Yekop, he gets, boiled down to his essence and turned into a controller, essentially. And one of the things about it was,
I guess that's not a laughing thing, but
you're a sick, perverted man. No. But it's interesting because, I honestly, when I read the book, I feared for the Guardians. I was afraid that Robert Venditti was going to wipe them out, because they did get rid of Yekop, and he was one of the characters during the New Guardians run that had some dialogue, and he was one of the characters that they tried to develop, unlike some of these other guys that we see here that they didn't have a lot of speaking parts. Some of them did, but you basically have a new Guardian Council essentially who says, hey, we're back. What does that mean for Jon Stewart? What does that mean for the leadership of the Corps? That's a loaded question right there. And does anybody want them back in charge? But Ganthet seems to be, I don't want to say he's rejuvenated, but I think he goes through, if an immortal can have a midlife crisis, I think that might have been part of it. But he's realizing that the end may very well be near, and I didn't get everything done I thought I was going to get done, just like all of us do.
Well, that makes him the biggest procrastinator,
right?
ever.
And so you've got kind of the best of the old Guardians with Ganthet and Sade representing that era, and you've got Rami, who's brand new, and then you've got 3 of the Templar Guardians forming essentially a new Council of Guardians, and they go back to
they're the ones who are hanging out in the New Guardians.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice to bring them up. I thought I was right there with you. I thought they were gonna at least get it down to just Ganthet left over.
Well, and it's interesting because, you read comics and you don't get, like, certain characters are not going to die. The things are going to come out at the end of the story, not radically changed. But sometimes it does happen. And this was a situation where I thought, boy, he's off in a couple of Guardians here. Maybe this really is, maybe it really is the Twilight of the Guardians here.
Well, it would make sense. They're like expendable. I didn't think Ganthet might have gotten it, but I could have seen, maybe Sade, just to really.
Oh, wouldn't that would have been so dramatic.
Oh yeah. And they didn't. And, we kind of talked about this, is that this was kind of an interesting issue in that it was a very positive issue at the end. There was a real positive ending to it. Now, yeah, granted, the controllers kind of got away in that cheesy 80s, before they all teleported out of there. Their little silhouettes left. I'm sorry, that part kind of bothered me. It was like. So, but I was like, okay, they get away. You get a pass on that one. But the future is looking bright for the Green Lanterns. I guess is the main thing here. Is that it was a good way to end. But now, what does that mean? What are the Guardians' role here?
Right, that's the $1 million question. What's going to happen next? Are they going to take over in a leadership capacity? Are they going to be more of an advisory panel? I don't know. Are they just going to be? Are they going to be like the kids that came home after being away and just sleep on the sofa and are they going to loaf around on Oa or Mogo? Excuse me.
Well, we were joking around earlier. It seemed very. Just like they kind of help themselves to everything. It's like, hey, let's come in here. Here's your shirts back. We're back, everybody.
They go into the break room and steal all the donuts, Kilowog goes there and who took my lunch, and
it's like, I'm sorry, guys, but after the planet of Oa blew up, we kind of moved on.
So I think that's what's going to be interesting going forward. And I agree that the controllers disappearing the way they did was a little cheesy, but I'm also glad that we aren't going to see them in the science cells and we're going to see them return. And the end of the issue when you see the Dark Stars back, that was really, to me, I was excited by that. It looks like they are more robotic Dark Stars than anything else. But it's nice to see the cosmic universe maybe expand and Robert Venditti bringing something old and putting a new spin on it. And
no, I think that will be, I'm excited. Well, you're seeing the beginnings of something bigger and epic down the road.
Yeah. I think, he's planting a lot of seeds. And again, it's that long form storytelling that I really appreciate that. So I'm excited by that. There were also some fun moments. Did you get the whole Four Horsemen Ric Flair thing?
Yeah, from the wrestling. Yeah.
So,
or does that go deeper in Green Lantern?
No, it doesn't go any deeper in Green Lantern. Okay. But Robert Venditti was kind of funny on Twitter. He said, I spent too many hours thinking about whether Kyle Rayner would even know who Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen were, but figured they were enough of a pop culture reference that Kyle would get it. But Guy Gardner definitely had a poster of Ric Flair on his wall in his bedroom when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And so it begs the question, which one is Ric Flair to you?
Ric Flair?
Yeah, which one?
It would have to be Hal.
Yeah, I agree.
Just because, Hal is the Flair, It
was neat to see the wrestling reference there. What I took joy in was seeing these four guys work as a unit, because we have not seen them work as a unit, I don't think, since War of the Green Lanterns. There's been things where they've done together, but not the same way. This was the four guys out on the road. This was like a four-way buddy cop movie. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and it was and it was great. Well, again, it was. You could even tell in just the commentary and the narration by Ganthet, and even just some of the captions on some of the earlier issues of just talking about who each of them are and what their strengths are. And all their strengths got to shine a little bit, which was great. And even just in the fighting scene when Ganthet's like kind of pointing each of them out, and there's Guy Gardner slamming one and aliens.
Yeah.
Car door.
The car door, yeah. That was great. It was great.
Well, which is funny because, why would you make just a car as a construct just so you can slam a person's head into it?
but it's so characteristic. I think.
No, it was funny. I thought that was great.
Yeah. I think it's great that they kept the individuality of the characters, and then there's you see the friendships develop. You see Kyle and Hal's friendship continuing to go, and there was a neat piece of dialogue in that first part in issue 33 where the two of them were working together to construct a wall to try to keep things separated. And Kyle and Hal are talking about Sornik Natu. And then Kyle kind of says, hey, you ever think about, and Hal just kind of shoots him a look because they're talking about Carol. And you think, they must be building towards something. Robert Venditti must have something in store for Carol and Hal in some way, because between the tease we got a couple issues ago and this one, that he's got to be building towards something. And it even goes back to that story with the New Gods where, there was the whole thing about you've got to be more than just Green Lantern. You got to be you. So I think some things are coming down the road that are going to be really interesting.
And it looks like, I think with just the Guardians putting on those old shirts, I was kind of like, oh, wow. So are they going back to is Venditti trying to bring us back to the, where the core was at, Jeff Johns, where they have the Guardians, or a little bit different. Now John Stewart in charge. I don't know. It looks like it's a bright future for the Green Lanterns.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, for now as good as it's gonna be bright for these guys. But I wonder if part of it is to give John Stewart some freedom, because he's been tied to Mogo, and this is the first time I think in a long time he's been really active. I mean, you've had scenes where he's defended Mogo and stuff, but not out there doing stuff. And maybe this is a way to narratively get him more unshackled from the responsibilities of direct leadership. Maybe not. I don't know. The next arc is going to be really interesting because you've got Hal versus Zod.
Oh, Hal versus Zod?
Yep. Yeah, if you look at the last page, the Dark Star thing, it says next Zod. And looking at the solicitations, it looks like Zod is going after the Green Lanterns for some reason.
Now, I saw Zod, right, Z-O-D, and I was like, but Are we still talking General Zod?
Yes.
Or am I thinking? Oh,
yep.
Really?
Yep, General Zod. So that'll be interesting. I think it'll be kind of exciting.
Yeah, I like General Zod.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like him. I just
you just kind of like him.
I like that he represents that he would be battling somebody.
Yeah,
he seems like a worthy foe.
Absolutely, it'll be a lot of fun, I think. And these 4 issues were all drawn by Jack Herbert. And I thought visually, I was a little concerned because it wasn't Ethan Van Sciver and it wasn't Rafa Sandoval, and so I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know whether Rafa's off the book because I haven't seen his name come up in the credits too much in a while, but I think he's still there. For whatever reason, I had to take a break. And I know Ethan is working. He just posted on social media that he's working on issue 42 right now. So obviously he's still on the book. But anyway,
and sometimes he could be just burned out,
Yeah, you never know. At any rate, it was a good book. I enjoyed all 4 issues. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Oh no, absolutely. This is I would say this is one of my favorites in a long, long time. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's take a break and we'll come back and wrap things up.
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of Oa.
The podcast of Oa.
So, Myron, that wraps up episode 118. We talked about issues 30 through 31, where we got to see Superman and Hal together and a little return from Hector Hammond. We talked about Dawnbreaker. Still don't know what's going on with that, but you seem to do, so that's good. And issues 33 through 36, The Twilight of the Guardians. And I tell you, that's one of the arcs that I think both you and I agree. Really great story. One of the better ones we've seen in a long, long time.
I agree. I think 2018 is off to a great start.
Oh, absolutely. Things are looking bright. We're 118 in 2018. Wow, look at that.
Wow. Hey. And
I don't know what that means.
with the new year, hopefully we'll be able to get ourselves back on track, and people won't be having to wait for so long between episodes. Maybe we'll do 2 episodes a month and cover one issue each month, or each issue or something, each episode. But we'll be back soon. Hope everybody's doing well, and everybody please take care of yourselves and keep your power rings charged. And until next time, make every day your brightest day. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. And Skype users can leave a voicemail on the show's account, Blog of OA. Emails can be sent to greenlantern@stny.rr.com. And you can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Facebook and Google+. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.